Hello everyone, and welcome once again to the vast and ominous comic book vault. I'm Captain Logan, and it's time for new acquisitions once again. Finally, after a long break, last week we had one brand new issue added to the vault, and that was Amazing Spider-Man number 700. Now, I've been inundated with questions about this book, with requests for full in-depth analysis review, and I will be doing that with Dan next week. I don't want to really cover this on the vault right now, just because I know people aren't wanting a non-spoiler review, and this has been out for a while, so most people know what happens in it now. All I'll say about it right now is that I don't care for the direction Slott's taking Spider-Man right now. This idea of Doc Ock taking over Spider-Man's body is kind of fun and could work for a little while, but it seems like a story arc and not something that's worthy of changing the whole status quo of Spider-Man for a good long time. Now, there's a lot of speculation taking this into Superior Spider-Man, new ongoing, canceling Amazing for Doc Ock to take over Spider-Man's body. So a lot of speculation about exactly how long this is going to last, what Slott's going to do. There's this there's this idea that's kind of planted here that Doc Ock being in Peter Parker's body makes him gives him a little bit of Peter Parker, or maybe even more than a little bit of Peter Parker in his personality now, and so that's going to influence things. Dan and I are going to explore all that next week when we cover this, along with the couple issues leading into it after Danger Zone. So, we'll see in a few days with that. Right now, I got 6 brand new comics for you from this week from my pull box, and Dan will be with us at the end of the show to cover books Captain Logan doesn't read. Right now, let's go to my 1DC book for the week. Batman Incorporated, number 6. This issue gives us as many questions as it does answers, which is kind of Grant Morrison's way, but I do appreciate that we're getting more of a sense of Talia's end goals and what exactly Leviathan has been trying to do. There's also a lot of background stuff with a lot of the members of Batman Inc. just kind of getting their butts handed to them by Leviathan. And I really like this kind of balance that Grant Morrison gives us of the over-the-top Silver Age kind of stuff with things like Bat Cow, yeah, that's here, and the sort of I don't want to say street level, but somewhat more grounded reality of simply people can get hurt and get killed in this universe. And, you know, Chris Burnham likes to draw this really kind of bloody, gruesome stuff. And I'm not going to go as far as to say that it's gratuitous violence, but it's not really, it's never been my cup of tea from you know, the art in Batman and Robin when Grant Morrison was writing that, up into this, which has that same kind of thing. I don't love looking at it. I find it kind of ugly, but I also think that that's somewhat the point of it, and it makes the Silver Age stuff, the sillier bits that he puts in and adds in this canon from the olden days of Batman comics, it makes all that less cheesy and more kind of twisted, really. And I think that that's the point of it. I think that that's why he's doing it, and he's trying to show us how terrifying a comic book world where anything at all can happen would be. And I think he does a really good job of that. You know, if that's what you want to read. I find it a little bit creepy, but I also can't help but read it month to month. So so there you go. We were getting the sense last issue that maybe Talia's whole plan here, her whole endgame, is to get Damian back. And now we find out in this issue, though I won't reveal what exactly her plan is, that that's not really the case, and that she's kind of trying to get revenge on Batman, and it's this very vindictive thing. And Bruce is confused by this because he says, Talia, you're not like this. You're not vindictive. This isn't how you handle things. And so kind of a new mystery is made as to why Talia has suddenly changed so much, and how she operates and what her motivations are. And there is a major sadistic choice for Batman in this. So the stakes are really high, things are really interesting. I don't entirely know what's going on, which is always the case with Morrison, but intrigued enough to continue, and looking forward to seeing where it goes. My one IDW for the book, my one IDW book for the week this week is Star Trek number 16. this is Mirrored Part 2, and this is the Star Trek Ongoing's attempt at doing a mirror universe story. So, like this book has been doing, it takes an original series episode and it kind of redoes it for the J.J. Abrams' new rebooted Star Trek universe. And as time has gone on, they've continued straying further and further away from the original episodes, which is really great, because when they first started, it was kind of the episode exactly like it was, with just a few little tweaks here and there, and it wasn't that interesting, and it wasn't really worth your $8, you know, between the two issues, because you could just sit down and watch the original episode. What is the point? And here we get something very different, and I really appreciate that, but it's not anything like as cool as what they did with the Tribbles one, because it borrows, as I said last time when I reviewed the first part of this, it borrows way too much of its plot from Enterprises in a Mirror Darkly. I mean, we've got Captain Kirk being like really angry and driven because he's having a difficult time moving up the ladder of command. He finally becomes a captain in the first part of this. He steals an alien ship that came from the future and a different universe. Where have we seen all this before? I mean, this has been done, and it's really kind of disappointing, because the idea of how would the mirror universe have been changed by Nero's return, and in this issue by Spock Prime's return, is a really fascinating idea, and I just don't think it's handled right. I think it's too predictable, it's too obvious, and it's just not very much fun. I didn't care for this at all, unfortunately, by the end, and one thing I found very perplexing is I'm not sure where we are here. We have this kind of framework that ultimately I think is just used as an excuse to do whatever the book wants to do, in our universe, in the, you know, Abrams rebooted universe, we've got this framework that bookends the two issues of Scotty and McCoy talking about the idea that for every action a person makes, there's a new universe created, and therefore every single thing that is possible does happen somewhere in the multiverse. Now, there's precedent for this in canon Star Trek. We saw this in parallels in Next Generation with Worf, and going to all these different universes where, you know, everything that he does creates this new universe. Okay, fine, that's cool, but why do we have to do it with Mirror Universe? Wouldn't it have been a lot more fun to have, like, rebooted the real Mirror Universe kind of the same way that the original Star Trek universe got rebooted, and explore kind of the nature of that, where it's like, is it mirrored to the point where when you get to a certain point, Romulus still inevitably blows up, and Spock Prime still inevitably goes back in time, regardless of everything that happens in between? All that would have been really interesting. As it stands here, this is Spock Prime from the same universe showing up in the Mirror Universe, or at the very least a Spock Prime from in a 100% identical universe, because he shows up here and he remembers having gone to the Mirror Universe in original series, and everything about him is exactly the same way it is in the movie. I don't get it. I find it bizarre that it was done that way, because that means that there are two Spock Primes that are entirely identical. One goes to a Mirror Universe and one goes to our regular Star Trek universe and reboots them. I don't know, I had kind of a who cares feeling by the end of this. A little unfortunate, because it was a fun idea, you know, to take Nero and the Narada into the Mirror Universe, and I don't think it worked, but that might just be me. Next up, Venom, number 29 by Cullen Bunn. Once again, Cullen Bunn loves his occult stuff, and he loves bringing in really obscure B and C list characters, and he's doing that again here. Now, as always, I'm not a big fan of the occult stuff. The plot with the UFOs and their kind of like scientific experimentation that has something to do with magic and occult, but we don't really know what exactly it is yet. All that stuff is not really doing a lot for me yet, but I am really enjoying Flash Thompson's characterization through this, and enjoying this and having no problem getting through it, because I think that as time has gone on, Cullen Bunn has gotten better and better and better at writing this, and has a really good voice for Flash now, and so I really love how this opens. We've got Flash Thompson trying to save people, and people are dying, and he's in his head in an internal monologue, putting everything in football terms, as he has a tendency to do, and he's looking at everything like a game. and he's using all these football terminologies, Hail Mary plays, those sorts of things, to as kind of an analogy for what's going on. And he stops himself, and he actually criticizes himself for doing that, and is like, wait a minute, this isn't a game, this is real life, and he realizes that it's all a mask for his fear of failure, because he's terrified that he's going to fail like he always is, and that's kind of his shtick. There's a great bookend here, and I won't reveal the cliffhanger ending, but it's a good one that really does a lot with that. So it opens with Flash Thompson is afraid of failure, and it ends with a physical manifestation of his fear of failure. It's really good stuff, and I hope that he carries it through an issue or two and really does some fun stuff with it. I'm being cryptic because I don't want to tell you what happens. Anyway, that's about it with that. I also really like his relationship and banter with Valkyrie. He's kind of dating her now, but he makes the mistake when they're fighting the UFOs toward the end of calling her his girlfriend, and he has to deal with public embarrassment because she's like, wait, what? And then he's like, I mean, my friend with benefits! And yeah, it's hilarious. Anyway, quite a good solid issue. Next up, All New X-Men number 5. I like that this early in this series, we already have this turning point where we know kind of, we're given kind of a roadmap as to where things are going to go now with the original 5 X-Men brought from the past into the present. They make a major choice here based on the events that have happened already about whether or not they're going to stick around and why they make the choices that they make. And all of it works, and it comes from very solid character places. Everybody has to really take a good hard look at themselves in this book. Not the least of which being Cyclops, of course, who, and I'm talking about original Cyclops from the past, who not only has to deal with the fact that his future self kills Charles Xavier, but he's also got to deal with the fact that his friends, the other 4 original X-Men, don't trust him now because they've seen that he is capable of this. And nobody's backing him. Nobody's saying, well, Cyclops hasn't done it yet, we can't condemn him for something that hasn't happened yet, because it's a little bit different than, like, Minority Report. You know, it's a little bit different than, like seeing the future on a video screen and knowing what a person is going to do and not actually trying to correct it, when you have both of the people physically there and you've seen the guy who did it. It's fascinating. Before this series started, I thought this could have been really corny and really poorly handled, and Bendis does such a good job creating 2 sets of characters where they're each pair, they're the same people, but distinctly different now. It reminds me again of a Star Trek thing, like Thomas Riker and Will Riker, and how, you know, the what has happened in your past leading up to this point defines you. And so they're not the same people. The 2 Cyclopses are very different. The 2 Beasts are very different, and they all have to really deal with that. Also, I really like that Bendis is dealing with a criticism that a lot of people have had, thinking that he is going against X-Men continuity by having Jean Grey already have telepathy, or developing it at this point, because she's not supposed to get telepathy until a year later from the point that they went to the past to retrieve them. And it's handled here. It's actually talked about, and the speculation from Beast is that it's because of they've altered her history and she's been brought to the present, and that might have shocked her system into already developing this power. I hope it's more than that. I hope that we actually get a good, solid explanation for it, but I appreciate the fact that Bendis is dealing with it. This is Stuart Immonen's best art so far. I am so loving looking at this book, and there's this amazing two-page spread where she's reading people's minds and gets her whole future, and it's so fantastic, and I looked at it for a good solid 3-4 minutes. Anyway, still really quite excellent. Now let's move on to Daredevil End of Days, number 4. So the mystery is really thickening here. We're starting to get closer and closer to finding out what that last word was that Matt Murdock said before he died, Maypone. And here we finally get some kind of a connection with Maypone, and that's the death of Bullseye. Now remember, Bullseye at the beginning of the series kills Daredevil. Remember that this is outside of regular 616 continuity, and it's its own thing. And he finally manages to kill Daredevil. Here, he commits suicide, and above his bed, he writes in his own blood, Maypone. And so Ben Urich trying to piece all this together, and by the way, Ben Urich is a great detective. He goes all over the room and points things out and is able to piece together exactly what happened. And I can't really talk about this issue without saying that he commits suicide, but I won't tell you any of the details because it's really fascinating to see Ben Urich put all that together. And he starts to realize that maybe that word meant something only to Ben and I'm sorry, only to Matt and only to Bullseye. And him saying that just before he dies apparently drives Bullseye insane to the point where he kills himself. And there's a major thing to do with Elektra that I won't get into, but the mystery is so interesting, and I cannot get enough of this amazing artwork. Like I said last issue, there's some great places where it looks a little bit abstract, but it's there to give you kind of a sense of the past while some of this internal monologuing is going on, and that mixed in with this really gritty street level stuff from Mac is working really well. It's a really good mix. Like I said, it's still a very, sketchy, gritty looking book, but it needs to be. That's necessary for the story that's being told here. And there's a wonderful cliffhanger at the end. There's a wonderful character reveal at the end, but it's not one of those corny like right at the very end you flip the page and oh, it's this guy. It's a really cool reveal for who Ben Urich has to go to for help next. It's for the last 2-3 pages. They have some very interesting conversation and exchanges, and this is very much one of the best limited series so far, because it's not over yet, that I've read in a really long time. Lastly, on my end is Ultimate Comics Spider-Man number 19. Once again, written by Bendis. I did not mean to put 3 Bendis books together. Bendis hit it out of the ballpark this week, and this is very solid, although probably the least good of the 3, but you're talking all new X-Men and Daredevil End of Days with this. Bendis has kind of a lot of work to do here because he's got to get us out of the United We Fall, United We Stand thing and back into regular Spider-Man, regular Ultimate Spider-Man, which I really appreciate because I'm ready to get back to basics on this, and I really enjoyed the opening pages probably more than anything else in this issue, because we get to see Miles web-swinging and having a difficult time with it and realizing how difficult web-swinging really is, and I don't think I've seen the kind of detail gone into that Bendis does here with how hard it would be to web swing and how many steps ahead you'd have to be while you're slinging your webs and, hoping to God that you can find another place after you get to a certain spot to actually connect your web up to, otherwise you're gonna fall and hit the ground. And that was all really cool. We're getting more of this stuff with Miles's father, and he's refusing to tell anybody what exactly happened with him and Hydra. I'm still not really loving that, although I really did appreciate the connection made, the parallel with The fact that, Miles and his father now have one big thing in common, even though his father hates Spider-Man, and that is that they've both fought Hydra. So it'll be interesting to see what's done with that. I think the thing I latched onto the most here, though, was J. Jonah Jameson, and there's this wonderfully human and touching and sad kind of scene because Betty Brant in this universe has just been killed for knowing too much about Spider-Man. And she was about to reveal who the new Ultimate Spider-Man was because she's figured it out. And from last issue, we found out that all she really cares about is fame and fortune, and that's the reason Jameson had fired her months or years previous. And what ends up happening is Jameson kind of goes through all the details and tells us that he refused he refused to take that information from her, to buy it from her, because he doesn't want to know who Spider-Man was. By the end of it, ultimately, Peter Parker was a very important figure in this Jameson's life, and he feels like if he printed who Spider-Man was, he would have to stop being Spider-Man. And there's all these great things that he could do as Spider-Man that would never get done. So this Jameson is really matured and grown, and I thought that it was really sad seeing him really having to deal with Peter's death and how he had treated him before and all of that. So it's a really solid issue. There are a couple of scenes that I think are just absolutely brilliant and really, really riveting. So now it's time to go over to Dan Torrey, who's going to talk about books that Captain Logan doesn't read.
Hello, everybody, and welcome once again to Things Captain Logan Doesn't Read with Dan. Today I have for you 2 Marvel books and 2 DC books, so we got a nice mix. It's not going to be all Marvel stuff this time like it had been previously. That's always kind of boring when we don't have a lot of variety on the show. I would have had 5 books. I planned on having 5 books. The second issue of the Star Wars Purge miniseries that I reviewed previously on the show came out this week, but my store unfortunately got shorted all of the copies they had in their order, so I'm going to be picking that one up next week when they come in with the next week's releases at my shop, so that'll probably be on next week's show. Just wanted to let you guys know before I got into the reviews for this week. Let's begin first with Morbius the Living Vampire #1. This one is by Joe Keatage and Richard Elson on art. This is the first issue of Morbius's new ongoing series, and I wasn't really impressed with this one as much as I was with the .1 issue. It retreads a lot of ground that was already covered in the .1 issue. And I think those .1 issues may be a detriment to making these first issues as accessible as they should be. I don't think it's a good idea to set up ongoing series in other books, but that's just me. I think the first issue should be able to speak for itself. When I say retreading, it's not really plot-wise. He's not doing the same sort of things that he did in the .1 issue, but the whole self-destructiveness thing, his troubled past, and the way his powers work are all reiterated here. But it's not as comprehensive or as interesting as the .1 issue. The interesting additions to his backstory and the parallels with his childhood and his future self are a bit glazed over here, in favor of just putting narration boxes of exposition over scenes of him fighting thugs for like 2/3 of the issue. The narration reads sort of like a checklist of things people may want to know about Morbius before investing in his character, which I guess is sort of a noble endeavor because of how little of a following Morbius has, or probably will have as a title of a monthly ongoing series, but I felt like my hand was being held a bit too tightly as I read the checklist of things that I need to know about Morbius for 2/3 of the issue, and then only getting to see Morbius do the things that were talked about in the narration for the majority of the issue a little bit towards the end. The strange similarities to Daredevil that I talked about with the .1 issue become even more prevalent here as well, oddly enough, when Morbius is thrown into a cesspool almost identical to Hell's Kitchen, The Call Home, and is kicked to the curb as a homeless man of his own accord, Born Again style. It was just very weird how similar this seemed to Daredevil to me. Not that it's a bad thing, it just something that stuck in my head. Overall, I didn't really care for Morbius #1 as much as I did the .1 issue, but I think there are enough character threads that were set up in that issue and a little bit here to keep me interested, at least for a few more issues before I decide if I'm in for the long haul or if I'm going to drop it. I want to give this one a chance because I like the creative team. Joe Keatinge is a writer that I've heard a lot of good buzz about, and I like Morbius as a character, so I wasn't really too impressed with this one. Next, we're going to go over to one of my most anticipated books of the Marvel Now relaunch, New Avengers #1 by Jonathan Hickman and Steve Epting. The reason I was so excited about this was because it was Jonathan Hickman writing Doctor Strange, Reed Richards, and Beast in the same book. That's not something I would have missed for the world. Steve Epting's involvement in this didn't exactly turn me away either. He's a fantastic artist. This book, for those who don't know, the premise is it focuses on the Illuminati of the Marvel Universe, or the secret society of superheroes that basically dictate major world events without the knowledge of the public. It's sort of based on the Illuminati conspiracy of the elite who exist in the world today that many people talk about on the internet and things like that. This issue mainly focuses on Black Panther, the only one of the original Illuminati recruits who was opposed to the group's formation. Most of the other characters don't appear until the very last page of the issue and don't really have much dialogue. So if you were coming to this looking for a Iron Man or Reed Richards or even Doctor Strange-centric issue, this is just pretty much all Black Panther. But even though I wasn't here necessarily for Black Panther because I'm not a huge fan, mainly because I haven't read a ton of them, I was really interested in him here. Hickman uses Black Panther to state what the mission is going to be for this book and why it's a viable and different approach to the Avengers in contrast to the main book. It's very political and metaphysical in nature. The main thing that's really talked about here is the nature of things ending, and that even though humans know everything must end inevitably, they go to every length in trying to prevent that end in coming, and that this inevitability is something that every human goes out of their way to not perceive, even if they have to deny it. In the issue, Black Panther talks about watching the other world empires crumble around Wakanda because the old men that run them are out of ideas. He himself prides himself on preventing the end he sees among his fellow nations by ensuring the education and care of those who will lead his people into the future, the younger generation, basically. However, we see that plan disrupted here, and T'Challa is put in the same position as his Illuminati conspirators, a desperate man staring the end in the eye, looking for a way to fight the inevitable. And so he calls his fellow desperate men to fight the end he sees in front of him. It's really interesting. It's a very nice character piece for Black Panther, and I'm really intrigued for the next issue. I can't wait. This was very good. I would highly recommend it. And now we're going to move over to Justice League #15. Justice League isn't a book that I usually buy, but the Throne of Atlantis crossover, as you can see the banner up top on here, with the Aquaman book, forced my hand this week. So here's the most recent issue for review. I'm really enjoying this crossover so far, mainly because it sort of takes the inner conflict that is Arthur's principal motivation and flaw, at least how I like him, and how he's been in the 52 so far, which is a conflict of a man searching for a home within two places he doesn't belong, and this crossover sort of puts that on an epic scale, with the Atlanteans and the surface world sort of fighting each other with Arthur caught in the middle. The book also gets really political at points, which I really enjoyed. Ocean Master, again, is sort of the main voice for this, where he conducts a false flag operation of sorts, which is similar to the burning of the Reichstag building in Nazi Germany that justified the warmongering and right-restricting behavior of the Third Reich before World War II broke out. It's sort of similar to that, so I thought it was interesting that Johns was using real historical, political avenues to control people in this. It was really interesting. It also talks a bit about fear as a method of social control, comparing the way Batman uses fear to deter criminals nobly versus Superman's way of looking at things, that trust and inspiration of the people is the only way to fix the problem at its source, and that's the only way you're going to ever achieve anything. Along with this obvious and classic juxtaposition, I mean, let's face it, the Superman-Batman thing has been played by so many other people before. The interesting thing about it is that Johns uses it as a way to present Ocean Master and Aquaman as two sides of the same coin that Batman and Superman are, with Aquaman being a figure worthy of inspirational thoughts from people, but hasn't really earned the respect of the public because of his reluctance to be a hero and the whole public perception that he's sort of useless. And Ocean Master, of course, is the opposite. He wants nothing more than to be dominant or an oppressive force over others, using the same agent of control Batman does, using fear to manipulate his people, but to an end Batman would never be able to ethically reconcile. It's basically Batman if you were to go way too far, sort of the fascist view of Batman like people such as Frank Miller have proposed before. These juxtapositions with the various Justice League characters and the characters that have been in the Aquaman book for a while do a lot for making the Justice League's presence feel warranted and welcome, which I was really surprised about. Overall, I really enjoyed this quite a bit. I recommend it. It's pretty good. All right, and then the last book we have on the agenda here is, in fact, Aquaman number 15. And this has a lot of the same ideas going on as Justice League 15 because this is part 2 of the Throne of Atlantis story. But this issue is also very good, and it goes even further in making the Justice League feel like a welcome presence in this story. At least for me it was. After defining the major conflict of the Aquaman book for 15 issues as being Aquaman as a man trapped between two worlds he doesn't belong in, Johns sort of angles the Justice League as the place Arthur can call home, his family, that he's found home among the other misfits of the surface world. I was really surprised to find myself liking the Justice League in the story as much as I did, but Johns is doing a really good job at making this something worthy of their involvement, not only plot and huge cataclysmic conflict-wise, but also character-wise. This is the Jeff Johns whose work I fell in love with when I first began reading his work with The Flash. I haven't been reading Justice League thus far. After the first arc, I sort of dropped off, but he seems to have hit his stride a bit better than with the first arc. So maybe I'll go back and pick some of those issues up eventually. Who knows? But for right now, I'm really enjoying this. All right, so that's all the books I have for you guys this week, and I hope you enjoyed them. Thanks for watching. I'll see you next time.
Thanks a lot, Dan, and thank you very much for watching. If you ever want to send me anything to review on the Comic Book Vault, me or Vince, you can always send us things to the P.O. Box. That's Geekvolution, P.O. Box 14183, Lenexa, Kansas 66285. And I'll be back with you very soon with Dan for a review of Amazing Spider-Man number 700. We're going to do that next week. Also, stay tuned for, of course, lots more episodes of Spawn Year and lots more stuff coming out very shortly. Thanks as always for watching. I'm Captain Logan, and happy reading.